Hello, everyone. Thanks for hopping on. We'll probably start around like 1:05 just to give some people time to get in. A lot of the note taker AIs. Um,
So interesting. It's just
hmm I know, and I can't tell if it's like them as well as the robots, but coming in. Hey everyone, thanks for joining. A few more additional people. We're gonna get started here in about 4 minutes, just to give people a chance to come into the meeting before we get started. A lot of DC folks in here. Did everybody survive the big snowstorm last night? We were just talking about that before everybody hopped on, but it was, I think, around 8 inches at least by me. All right, well, as we're getting started, if everybody could just, in the chat, put your name, your organization or affiliation, and where you're located at, just city or state, and whichever you prefer, just so we can kind of see who's all here. It'd be great. But I think the chat should be enabled. Quite a variety of people. I know just looking at here, I know we have North Carolina, Michigan, DC, Baltimore. All right, well, we got 17 of us in here, 18. But I think we're going to go ahead and get started. Before we do get started, I just have a couple of announcements. One is our third cohort application is live for our UCC fellowship program. So I'm going to put the application to that in the chat. We have positions open in DC, Saginaw, Michigan, and Durham, North Carolina. So I know we have people from all over in here that are around those areas. So please feel free to look at that application and send it to anybody who might be interested in doing that. Send that out. But other than that, my name is Isabel. I know most of you. I'm the urban associate here at the Conservation Fund. This is our fourth Lunch and Learn I believe we've done so far, first of the 2025 year. So we're really excited to have Douglass Community Land Trust take the lead on this. So I'm going to introduce my friend Vaughn, and he will take the lead on this presentation today. And I'll kind of take a back seat. We're going to do the presentation, and then we're going to have question and answers at the end. So please wait for questions until the end, if possible, and then we'll make sure to get back to those as well. But yeah, thank you. Vaughn, go ahead.
Thanks, Isabel, and good afternoon, everybody. I don't know if we have anybody on the West Coast. If so, good morning. Vaughn Perry, I'm the Director of Equity and Sustainability with the Douglass Community Land Trust. And today we're going to be having a conversation around centering community. So I'll talk a little bit about Douglass Community Land Trust and our mission, how we started, and then I'll go into a little bit more detail of how we center community voices. And I'll share my screen. Isabel, can you see that okay? Just want to make sure everybody can see.
It's in the presenter view. Do you know if you can
Oh,
switch so we can see
okay.
like the notes on the side?
How's that?
Perfect. Thank you.
Awesome. All right. So again, Vaughn Perry with the Douglass Community Land Trust. We're located here in Washington, D.C. I know that we have some other folks. We got a little bit of snow out there. I was joking with Isabel. I think we might have got like 6 to 7 inches where we are, and all the kids are out of school. And I was like, we were going to school when I was my age, they made us go, but these kids get out when it's just like 2 inches on the ground. Anyway, the mission for Douglass CLT is planting the roots of affordability, security, and prosperity for current and future generations. I just want to pause right there because when we talk about roots of affordability, oftentimes we hear that term, and when I'm out in the community, it's like, but affordable for who? And so we like to say it's affordable for the people that live in that community, right? We're not just going off of the government defined term, whether that's 80% AMI, but we want to make sure that people that live in their communities can continue to live in their communities. And then it's not just for residents that are here now, but for future generations. I often tell the story of my daughter who, was I think at the time was 30-ish, and she was making, decent middle income money, and she had some assistance through the housing purchase assistance program, and she went to go try to buy a house, and she just could not find anything that she could afford. And she ended up moving to California of all places, as if um, their housing prices are cheap. But it just goes to talk about how we are losing a lot of folks from our communities because they just simply can't afford to live in them. It's just too expensive. And then we're a nonprofit membership organization centered around racial and economic equity. What it means for us to be a membership organization, I'll talk about more, but really it's about how we want to put the decision making power back in the hands of the people that we serve. And one of the ways that we do that is by being a nonprofit membership organization. Really quickly, what's a community land trust? We start with the C in community. A C in CLT is community. It serves a community of people most often defined by those who live in a specific geographic area. Here at the Douglass CLT, we focus on what we call the Douglass Commonwealth, or DC. And even the name Douglass CLT was derived from Frederick Douglass. And then it's the land, right? The CLT acquires and retains land, taking it off the market and placing it under community control. And so ultimately, when we go into transactions, we look to take ownership of the land, and then that allows us to subsidize prices where people can get it, and they'll own everything on top of the land. And then finally, the trust. It's a democratic government organization founded on the principles of community control. Some of you might be familiar already, but community land trusts have always been rooted in racial justice. They Civil rights advocates established the first CLT in Georgia in 1961 as a means of preventing the displacement of Black farmers. And community land trusts are being used throughout the country to address gentrification, displacement, environmental racism, and bringing housing justice for Black, Indigenous, and other peoples of color. Decision making by members reflect equity in practice. Research shows that CLTs and other shared equity models help narrow the racial wealth gap. I know they did a study a few years ago in Washington, D.C., and at that time, there was a 80-to-1 disparity between in the racial wealth gap from Blacks to whites just here in DC. I can only imagine how that is in other places. And then the next picture, it says who's the boss, right? And it just kind of lays out the organizational structure for our community land trust. The membership structure of the Douglass CLT is designed to shore up organizational sustainability and ability to provide stewardship to properties in the land trust in perpetuity, because members have legal standing to correct course if the organization goes astray. They serve as the guardians for the community and make sure everyone benefits from the community development generations to come. So who's the boss? It's the community that's the boss. And if Douglass CLT ever starts to go in a direction that the community doesn't want, then they have the power and the control to make sure that they can steer it back in the right direction. I talked a little bit already about the big C and community, but I just want to point out, so we have our board of directors is a tripartite model, which is what a lot of community land trusts are, which means a third of the representatives come from the lessees or people that actually live on the properties. A third come from within the community, and then a third come from subject matter experts. So at any time in at any time, you have at least 2/3 of the people that are on our board that are coming directly from the community, which, again, reiterates the importance of how it's the community that's making the decisions. I don't know how that slide got on there. I talked a little bit about membership already, but I just want to talk about what is it that members can do, right? So members can participate at whatever level they're comfortable, right? They can vote in our annual memberships. Um, they can vote in our annual elections. They can be a voice on specific committees. So we have like a property acquisition committee, a policy and advocacy committee. They can expand their network by participating in trainings and staying informed on community trends and community needs and Douglass Community Land Trust priorities, but also they can recommend workshops and trainings on affordable housing, housing cooperatives, and the CLT model that we can share with other people. Um, Make sure I'm on the right slide. All right. So this particular slide is the current makeup of our board. As you can see, I talked a little bit about the tripartite model already. And while I said that the 2/3 of the board are made up primarily of the community, even all of our public representatives are located in Washington, D.C. and live in the community. And so oftentimes they can wear um, dual hats. One of the things I will point out specifically about this board is this is the first time since the organization has been in existence where we do not have a board member that was not a part of our founding board members. So our board, they have 2-year terms and they can serve for 3 consecutive terms, and then they have to take a year off. And we do that because we want to make sure that we can continue to get new people in, that folks can't just take control of, what the community wants. Um, but it also uh, causes us as staff to really always have to educate and to bring new training. And there's always this learning curve with new board members. So this is actually the first time where there's 0 people that have been on the founding board. But I want to talk a little bit about that really quickly. When the land trust was first started, it was started. It was birthed out of community meetings where people in the community said they wanted to have a land trust, and we started to do the work to form this land trust. Back then, I was working for a different organization, but I was part of the team to help to identify individuals that could serve on an advisory role in order to start what has become the Douglass Community Land Trust. Um, and since that time, we have, hired an executive director, Ginger Rumpf. I'm not sure if she's on here now, but she's planning to join. We have 233 units within our portfolio, and the organization has continued to grow. Um, and I'm really proud that many of the individuals that were on that advisory board continue to serve as board members. Even myself, I was a board member with the Land Trust from its existence. From its start, I ended up having to come off the board because my term was up in December of 2024. No, what's this, of 2023, but I came on full-time staff in January 2024. And so again, like it was really important for us to make sure that not only were we hearing the community, but the people that were on our board represented the community, because those would be the ones that would be making this major decisions for the organization. Get this next. Okay. So, yeah, I talked a little bit around like the land ownership. Ultimately, what we do is when we get the land, then we offer 99-year lease, which is renewable. But we have a lot of different tenures that can be a part of the portfolio: single family homes, co-ops, condominiums, multifamily rental, even some businesses. We don't currently have any businesses that are part of our portfolio, but it's something that we intend on doing in the future. And so, we look forward to continuing to look at ways where we can expand our portfolio. And then, I mean, like again, I've said this a couple of times, but it's all about how can we center the community in everything we do, and we talk about it in a way that we can pay it forward, right? It's not just for a one-time thing where we are investing in community, but we believe that the CLT model is a way that we can help individuals and residents now, but we can also help individuals and residents in the future. How do we do that? Some of that is through education and advocacy. It's really just training folks so that their voice can be heard. We had a couple of years ago, we were promised from the city $2 million to support the organization and to support the work that we were doing. And somehow, some way, the money ended up getting swept, and we were going to lose the $2 million. And so what we did was go to our membership and explain to them what was going on and train a lot of them on on speaking in front of a city council hearing. And so many of them went up and they spoke in front of the city council hearing about why it was important for that $2 million to get put back into um, the organization. And through that work, we were able to get the $2 million again. And I just use that as an example of the power that can be in community collectively, when you can really organize and empower them to voice what their needs are. We also have home ownership trainings. I'll talk a little bit about that in a couple of slides down. But for all of our folks that go that get single family homes specifically, we have one-on-one home ownership trainings with them. We have leadership trainings, that really just teaches them tools and strategies to be more effective leaders in the community. If it happens that it's related to the land trust or housing needs, then great. But it doesn't just have to, they don't just have to use those tools as it relates to housing. They can use it for whatever they want to advocate for in the community. We also have board development and trainings. We two of our staff that we currently have on Douglass CLT actually were former board members, right? And again, I tell people all the time, when I first started to work with the organization, I had no idea what a community land trust was. And it was basically, just on the job training and learning and being able to experience different community land trusts and doing what we do right here in DC that I've been able to learn. And I say the same thing about a lot of our board members. A lot of them had no idea what a community land trust is, and now they're getting shipped across the country as experts to talk about community land trust and what are some of the benefits. And then finally, we also offer membership trainings. We are whether those are specifically for like lessee trainings for our co-ops or condos or tenants associations, or just overall trainings in order to educate and just empower the residents so that they can know what is within what they can do, right? What they can do as it relates to housing. What are the things that they can advocate for, and what are the things they need to fight against? It's just really just giving them power to their voice. We also have ongoing stewardship, right? And so what's that mean? It means that we're looking at how do we make sure that folks just don't have housing, but it's safe and secure housing. And it's they're having some ownership over the things that are happening, where they live. So that might look like resident association technical assistance. It might look like making sure that the units stay within affordability compliance. It might look like supporting folks through foreclosure prevention. It might look like providing different assets or resources so that membership can build their assets. It can also include promoting property upkeep and for those that own their units, supporting them in the resale of their ownership units. Just want to kind of talk briefly around like how some of those ongoing stewardship opportunities show up, right? And so I listed on this slide apartments versus co-ops. So for an apartment, right now we have what's called the Savannah Apartment. So in there, we support tenants associations. We serve as a liaison between the tenants and the property managers and the owners. We also make sure that there's affordability compliance, but we also offer different opportunities for those members to build assets. Versus in our co-op, we do some of the same similar things, but they're also different. The apartment are renters, the co-ops, they're actually owners, right? And so they still have an affordability compliance, but when those owners want to sell, we offer support in the resale of their ownership units. We also continue to promote property upkeep with them. We support their co-op boards, making sure that they're having timely meetings. If they didn't have bylaws, helping them to create their bylaws. And again, helping to provide member asset building even with those co-ops. And some of that just shows up in different governing documents. I mentioned bylaws before. It could also be in the loan agreements that the co-op is making. It could be in the different covenants in order to maintain affordability. It could be in the articles of incorporation. So these are different ways that we can continue to support the residents to make sure that they are in good standing. Many of you, I'm not sure about across the country, but specifically in Washington D.C., some of the co-ops that exist have been challenged, and a lot of it is because folks that were there in the beginning have moved out, and a lot of them are underwater, and the co-ops are struggling. So what we try to offer is to come in and to support these organizations, and give them strategies and tools so that they don't find themselves in that position. Some different examples of how we really worked with community. So um, we just sold 8 homes at Skyland Terrace. This was maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago, but there were 8 new construction homes. They were for all households 60% or below. This was through a partnership with Habitat for Humanity. And it's crazy because this process took a couple of years to take place. But we were at the closing with the residents, and folks were so excited. It's like, yeah, this took a long time, but I'm glad we're finally here. But it was us continuing to hear from the community, like what their needs are. Even if you look at the 3 bedrooms, a lot of the spaces that are or homes that are being created, especially in DC, are like 1 and 2 bedrooms, and so that's not really feasible for folks that have families. And so we wanted to make sure that not only was it affordable, but it was big enough to accommodate their families. Another is the Buena Vista Cooperative. These are 34 units that are going to be permanently preserved. It used to be a rental property, and the residents exercised their tenant to purchase rights, which means they were able to buy the building from the owner when he wanted to sell. Douglass CLT has been supportive with them through that, and they just received funding through a grant through DC that's going to allow us to move forward into a long-term partnership with them. And so we're really excited around, how we can support them. Another way that, we make sure we hear from the community is most of the residents that live in Buena Vista are monolingual Spanish speakers. And so we even hired an interpreter to work with them, so that we can remove any language barriers. And then the final example I'll show is the our Deanwood site. This isn't constructed yet, but there's going to be 17 new construction homes. Again, 3 bedrooms, 2.5 baths. These are for 80% or below. But some of the community feedback that we received, they had a heritage tree that was already located, and so the community was like, we don't want to get rid of the tree. And so they end up designing around this tree, which I thought was amazing. But I also, one of the amazing things about this project is there's the buyers will only have a 3% interest rate, which is really unheard of, in our economic climate right now. In this project, Douglass CLT actually contributed $1.7 million total, or about $100,000 per home. We also have our pay it forward bargain sale homes, and what that is basically, there are some folks that do not want to support the gentrification and this displacement that has been taking place in our community, and so they agree that they'll sell their home to us, to Douglass, at a below market value, and that way we can keep that subsidy in their home. We generally offer additional subsidy, and that way, we can enable that a future sale to a household at no more than 80% MFI. And the money that they would have made, the seller, they can use that actually for a tax break. And so again, looking at ways where residents that don't want to take advantage of, if they bought their house 20 years ago and it's appreciated $400,000 or $500,000, they're like, you know what, I don't need to uh, uh, contribute to the gentrification that's taking place. I can sell my home so that I can continue to be aligned with how I feel socially. Here's just some different events that we've offered over the years to for community engagement and to offer trainings. It's in for capacity building opportunities. Some of the things that we often come to these presentations and we don't hear about like what some of the challenges are. Well, some of our challenges have definitely been membership renewal. We only have our memberships are 1 year. And we did that because we didn't want to have a membership portfolio just to say, oh, we got 1,000 people on our membership, but we actually want to make sure that we have engaged members. And so we made it 1 year. But what that means is at the end of the year, we always have to contact people like, hey, your membership's coming up. Would you mind signing back up? And again, most folks don't have a problem signing back up. It's just remembering to do so. And then the second thing is really our committee participation, looking at as many opportunities as possible to get people engaged. Again, many of the folks that we are working with, they're working 50, 60 hours a week. It's hard for them away from their jobs, away from taking their families to come and participate in the committee as well. And so, it's just continuing to work with the residents and members to make sure that we are offering committees that is relevant to them, but also looking at ways that we can provide something that is useful for them and worth their while to come and participate. Finally, here's just a slide of just some of the different engagement opportunities. We try to stay out in the community as much as possible, just sharing with residents about the Douglass CLT. What are some of the benefits of being a part of the CLT? And I think even more importantly, just being able to hear from the community what some of the current needs are. And I'm going to pause right there to answer any questions. I appreciate you all being attentive and listening to me today.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Vaughn. Yeah, there's a couple ways you guys can put your questions either in the chat, you can raise your hand, or you can use the Q&A function up in the top next to the chat. But whatever works, and we'll just wait for questions to come in. Or if anybody wants to be brave and bold, you can feel free to come off mute. I think I allowed all the microphones again.
Okay, I'm gonna unmute if that's okay.
Yeah, of course.
Hey, Vaughn and Isabel. Thank you for your presentation, Vaughn. I appreciated it. I'm Christy from Raleigh. I was a few minutes late, and I feel like I heard you say something about a grant. But my question is, how is the land trust funded, and how do you see that moving forward in the near future as well?
Yeah, so we are funded through a couple of different ways. We have some funding through philanthropy. We have some funding through government grants. Um, those are our two main sources of funding currently. Um, we, moving forward, it's really just trying to we've it's kind of a double-edged sword for us, right? When oftentimes when you go to funding uh, discussions, they talk about how a large part of your portfolio can come from individuals. And for us, it's like, well, we don't want to go ask for money from the individuals that we're actually trying to help too. And so while we still, have that available, if people just want to give, especially for like higher income folks. Um, but, we want to make sure that we continue to, talk with philanthropy about how they can support housing needs. We don't believe that many community land trusts can be successful if there is not a great partnership with the jurisdiction that they're part of. And so, we continue to work with our city council members and our mayor to make sure that we can continue to get funding, but also we think partnerships and collaborations are super important. And so, some of the ways that we go after funding is joint funding. Like I talked a little bit around our partnership with Habitat for Humanity. And so, again, like there are different ways for us to go after funding. I see Ginger Rump's hand raised. She is our executive director. Want to allow her to come off mute so she can she, respond to that question as well.
Yeah, thank you, Vaughn. I wanted that was a fantastic answer, and I guess I just wanted to reiterate that we, couple things. I want to have a question back at the audience members as well. We have not relied on government resources, but we have been fortunate to have received them. So, principally for project financing. And then we had a contract for some of our stewardship work, which we actually no longer have. In some ways, that's a benefit, right? Because with the scaling back of resources from the federal government, I'm sure folks are going to get squeezed. And we don't know what the ripple effect is going to be for foundations and philanthropy that support organizations such as ours, which are not direct service. So I'd be curious to hear from some folks also about how folks are dealing with that or thinking about dealing with that in this environment. I would also say that we also have set ourselves up for internally generated sources, right? So a very, very small land lease fee. It's nominal, but with volume, it generates income for us. A very small participation fee when we put funds into projects, and small. If we have we have the ability to structure projects in many different ways. Sometimes we have put loans into projects with minimal interest on it, but even so, that minimal interest, again, with volume, can result in earned streams of revenue.
Well, I'll have you on because I'm no land bank expert. There's a question in the chat that says I'm interested in the difference between land trust and land banks. What factors do you think make a region better suited to land trust versus land bank? I don't know if you can respond to that. If you have, I don't have as much knowledge about land banks to talk about like what would make one better suited than the other, but maybe you do.
So So land banking, government sometimes play that role, right? So there are cases where the government feels like they are best suited to be able to acquire and hold either land and or buildings that principally are vacant. And then the CLTs could be set up to be the developers of said properties or the partners with a developer. Douglass CLT principally is set up to be in partnership with developers as opposed to being developers ourselves. And I think there are a few instances where an organization is serving that dual purpose. That can be extremely challenging, principally to this, I think, to the side of the CLT, where we have your primary interest is partnering with the members and residents, right? So as opposed to being on the development side, right? So I think it is dependent on the focus of your organization. There are CLTs set up to really, really hone in on just units, development, getting as much out there as possible, and a little less focus on people. This organization, our board, was set up to focus, as Vaughn has shared, really focus in on the community, on people driving decision making, really being engaged with the organization, not to the exclusion of production and preservation of units. But I do think that there's that balancing act. I know I didn't round out the entire answer there, but I do think it is highly dependent. So I'll leave it there because I think that could go into. I think we could have a very long conversation around that.
Thanks, Sandra. There's also a question around, I'll just read the question. How do you begin to recruit people to join? Do you suggest any strategies you found successful? What is the structure of the member board of directors interaction? So I'll answer the last part first. All of our members, all of our board members are members. They come from the membership, and it is the membership that they can nominate the board members. They can not and the lessee members, the people that live in the portfolio, can nominate who they want to represent, who they want to be the representative on the lessee board. And so as I talk about the lessees, that's one of the first places we try to recruit from. These are the folks, in our opinion, that are most impacted by the community land trust, right? It's the people that live there. And so we waive any kind of fee for anybody that lives within one of the CLT properties, so that they can be active and engaged members of the portfolio. We also we are often encouraging them to actually serve in board seats. We also, as I was, shared in the presentation, anytime that we're out in the community, we have membership forums where we are inviting people to become a part of the organization. In order to be a member, you have to live in the community, live, work, or have a vested interest in the city. And so that's open to a lot of folks. Like you don't just have to be a DC resident to become a member of the community of Douglass CLT. I think and the other is really kind of just word of mouth, right? Folks hear about us, and they are sharing some of the great work we're doing, and they're like, hey, you can become a member too. I think what has been more challenging for us is when we do have members, making sure that we can engage with them in a way that it feels like it's meaningful to them. We only have a staff of 4. And so while we believe those touch points are very important to reach out to each and every one of the members, sometimes it can just be really challenging, trying to do that and trying to do all of the other things that we're doing, in our day to day. I hope that answers your question.
And then I see, Donna, you had a question. If you're still on or if your mic is able to, yeah, feel free. You mentioned earlier.
Hey everyone, yeah, it's cool. Good to see you guys. I was curious, Ginger or Ron, you might be able to answer this as well. Do y'all have like a property management staff?
No, we don't have anybody on staff to do property management. We work closely with the property managers at our different properties. I'm hesitating to say this, but to be really candid, we have found that some of the challenges that we have exist because of funding for property managers, and property managers are oftentimes challenged to do the work that they do and to be effective for the residents, right? And so one thing I didn't say, like as an organization, we're always looking at ways that we can fill a gap, and that's not just a financial gap. That could be through the ongoing services, right? And one of those could be, are there some gaps that exist with the property management where we can come in and, we have the capacity to support those property managers or to support a task maybe that they aren't able to get to. But we can't do that if we don't have a continuous feedback loop with the residents. And so again, like it's really, how can we make sure that we're continuing to listen to the residents about what some of their needs are. How can we make sure that we can bring both property manager and the residents together, so that it doesn't always have to be us in between, but they are having these conversations with one another. But in the case where it's contentious, we'd like to come in and serve as mediators.
Thank you.
And,
Yeah.
and if I may, I would just differentiate for those that maybe aren't as familiar between property management and asset management.
Yeah.
Right. So no to property management, unless, we do have a few small properties where, in the interim, we are managing, just in the interim. Asset management being, a different beast. And that is a function that we attempt to play. And I say attempt very candidly, because, as Vaughn mentioned, with a small staff, sometimes we are looking to other organizations to provide that or aspects of it, such as legal services providers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's helpful. The reason I had asked is because like leveraging property and or asset management as a revenue stream, like if you have those services and you could position yourself in the community to be a resource and also for pay for services, for skills you already have, the building the trust you already have in the community, and then also having that revenue stream for your CLT. So that, yeah, it's just something I got thinking about, and just different ways to think about what assets do you have and how can you leverage them. But thanks for that distinction. I was thinking property management, but that could also be done with asset management, Thank you.
Thanks, Donna.
All right. Awesome. Well, seeing where our time is at with 1:45, thank you all so much for hopping on. And thank you to Douglass CLT for hosting the session today. This was super helpful, and I hope everybody learned a little something new about different community land trustees in the Douglass Community Land Trust. But yeah, if you guys have any more questions, feel free to email them to me, and I can connect you with the Douglass Community Land Trust.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks,
everybody.
Isabella.
Thank you.